In the city of Chicago, the life expectancy of African Americans is alarmingly low. Why is that? What are we doing about it? I'm Sylvia Snowden, and this is Critical Condition. The news about the health of Black Chicagoans wasn't really great anywhere in the city's State of Health for Blacks in Chicago report, as Black Chicagoans' lifespans are, on average, 9 years shorter than the other Chicagoans. But in almost no place in the data brief was the contrast between Black Chicagoans and non-Black Chicagoans starker than in the area of diabetes. That's because the death rate among Blacks is 70% higher than among non-Black Chicagoans. And that's truly something. So today we're going to spend some time understanding how diabetes happens, why it kills so many Black people, and what, if anything, we can do to change that. And to help us with that discussion is today's very special guest. Before I get to her, though, I should say that I'm Sylvia Snowden. I'm a very proud employee here at Canon TV, and I'm thrilled to welcome to the program UI Health's Sheila Harmon. Hello, Sheila.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me.
You know, thank you really for being here, because this is a topic that, I was stunned to see that number. Really, I was. So I appreciate you joining us to make some sense. So thank you.
So yes, thank you. So important to get the information out about diabetes, pre-diabetes. So let me just say, so I am an advanced practice nurse. I am a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and I'm also a diabetes prevention lifestyle coach. So what does that mean? I live with diabetes. So I don't just teach, educate. I don't just see patients treat for diabetes, but I live with type 2 diabetes. My mom has diabetes. All my siblings have diabetes. I've lost 2 siblings to the complications of diabetes. So thank you for the opportunity to come and just share not only my story, but information about diabetes in general.
And certainly, I thank you for sharing that family history. That is, wow. I'm, sorry you've had to grapple with this. But what I heard you say, about how you've lost siblings to this, when you hear that the death rate for Black Chicagoans is 70% higher than non-Black Chicagoans, does that surprise you?
It does not. And that's because when you look at diabetes overall, the races that are affected the most by diabetes are Blacks, Hispanics, Asian American, Pacific Americans. So when you look at that number and you think about, let's talk about social determinants of health, right? Let's talk about those factors that affect in a negative way our health. And those are things like racism, lack of housing, lack of access to food, not being able to have access to health care. So when you look at all of those things, what communities are affected the most by not having access to health care, access to food, where there are food deserts, dealing with racism? We're affected. The African American community is most affected by the social determinants of health, which has a negative impact on health outcomes.
When we talk about diabetes, what do we mean?
So diabetes is the body's inability to properly utilize insulin. So it's not a sugar issue, it's a body's inability to utilize the insulin being made by your pancreas to be able to knock down the carbohydrate levels or sugar levels in the bloodstream. So let's give you an example. Everything you eat, except from the meat group and the fat group, is a carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are the food that the body naturally turns to sugar. So what are carbohydrates? Starches, fruit, vegetables, your dairy. So those food groups are carbohydrates. So when I hear people say, oh, I don't eat sugar, I said, well, do you eat fruit? Yeah, but that's not a sugar. Yeah, it is. Well, I eat a lot of vegetables. What vegetables do you eat? Corn, peas, potatoes, the most starchiest vegetables there are, right? And so we have to educate about having the healthier vegetables. And those are the things other than corn, peas, potatoes, and a lot of beans. And so that's what we have to do, is to understand that when we eat carbohydrates, our pancreas releases insulin to help move the glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cells. So diabetes is an insulin issue. It's the body's inability to make enough insulin to move carbohydrates out of the bloodstream and where it needs to go. When you exercise, your muscles feel glucose. When we're drinking water and we're urinating, our kidneys feel glucose. But we have to have enough insulin to move glucose when we're eating carbohydrates.
So explain this, and I thank you for that because that makes a lot of sense. How then is this an illness that can eventually kill you? So, sort of what happens to make your body succumb to this ultimately?
So when your body doesn't make enough insulin, the sugar builds up in the bloodstream. And when that number gets high, it starts to destroy the organ, starts to kill blood cells, right? And so what ends up happening is when there's so much sugar in the bloodstream and it's not being moved, then it could kill you. It could lead to death, depending on how high that number is.
Now, as I understand it, it is possible to be born into a body that simply does not produce enough insulin. Is that correct? Is it possible to just...
Correct. And so that's the difference between type 1 insulin, type 1 diabetes, and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is the autoimmune. It's the body's inability. It's just not making, it's nothing that you did. It's the autoimmune disease. And so your body is just not making insulin. That person will have to take insulin injections for the rest of their lives. Type 2 is generally what we've done. We've abused the body. We're overweight. We have lack of physical activity. Eat what we want as much as we want, as often as we want. We just don't want to get moving to be able to help the body move glucose in other areas, such as the muscles, urinating. And you hear people say, oh, it's so hard for me to drink water. I just don't like drinking water. Oh, they say you have to drink a minimum of 64 ounces a day. It's just so hard to do that. Well, your body, your organs, they need certain things. Your body needs you to move. The heart needs movement to help the blood pump better through the body. When you're drinking your water, it helps the kidneys flush the impurities out the body. So there are things that we need to do so that way we can keep our bodies in the best shape possible for us. There is no body transplant.
Okay, and you know what's fascinating about that? Most of us, and by us I mean Black folks, have type 2, which is the kind that it sounds like results from what you just said, the lack of exercise, the poor diet, the not really taking care of yourselves. Is that correct? That's what most...
Yes, and that's what we say. Yes.
Okay, and so it sounds like this isn't the sort of thing you just wake up one morning and have. Like it sounds like warning signs on the way to diabetes that your body's gonna stop making insulin. So can you talk a little bit about kind of what happens before you get to type 2 diabetes?
So yes, so now we're really educating about pre-diabetes as well. And so with pre-diabetes, so let's talk about the symptoms of diabetes: increase in thirst, increase in urination, blurry vision, dry skin, unusual weight loss. Before you get to that point, you already had little subtle symptoms. And now, just by having a healthcare provider, right, a primary care team, they're able to go in, look at your family history. We can do blood work. There's a test called the A1C. The A1C measures the amount of glucose that's been in the bloodstream in your cells for the last 3 months, because that's the life cycle of the red blood cell, 3 to 4 months. So just having a blood test will be able to tell us if you have prediabetes or not. When we tell you have prediabetes, that means that if you don't make lifestyle changes, and your lifestyle changes, how often should they last? For the rest of your life. That's why it's called lifestyle changes. These lifestyle changes, and we do these through a program, we have the diabetes prevention program. And we teach healthy eating, physical activity, stress management, because we want to decrease the risk factors of leading to type 2 diabetes. So there are certain things we can't change. What we can change is whether I'm overweight or not. I can change whether I'm physically active, getting in 150 minutes of exercise a week. I can change how much I eat as it relates to carbohydrates, how often I'm eating, and paying attention to my portion size, my serving size. So the things that we can change, we should change because there are enough variables that we just cannot change. And that's what we want to do. We want to talk about, so now we're pushing pre-diabetes so that you can be aware of that as well as knowing what the symptoms of diabetes are. Because once you start to have all of those symptoms, you've had the disease 5 to 10 years and doesn't know it. And so now we're trying to really get the message out about pre-diabetes awareness classes, making lifestyle changes that you will do for the rest of your life, especially when you know you're overweight, you have a lack of physical activity. And again, what is that lack of physical activity? Not getting in at least 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. Lack of physical activity, not getting in 150 minutes of exercise.
Okay, and I appreciate you saying that because I did do a lot of research preparing for this segment. And one of the things that I found was a very interesting note from Medical News Today. And they say, and I'm going to read this so I do not misstate it, that studies are increasingly showing that there is no genetic difference between Black people and white people when it comes to type 2 diabetes. Nothing genetically is different to make us more predisposed to this. So why are we dying from this and they are not? What are we doing?
You know, I talk to people about this all the time, and it goes back to education. Knowledge is power. You need to understand diabetes to take control of it. You need to understand diabetes to prevent the disease. So how do we get the education and information out? Like what you're doing now. We have to talk about it. Going out into the community, talking about it, educating people. If you have a family history, you know, you hear, well, my mother had it, she died from it. My father had it, he died from it. You know, I'm going to have to die from something. No, you don't have to die from this. Let's take control of it. Let's make those lifestyle changes, being physically active, learning how to make healthier food choices so that we can decrease our risk and we can decrease the complications. People don't die from diabetes, die from the complications of the disease. What are the complications? Heart attack, kidney failure, amputation to poor vascular circulation. People die from the complications of the disease because you did not take control of diabetes. So let's prevent it so that way we don't have to worry about even having a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. And if you have the disease, let's control it to prevent the complications that occur that lead to that.
Okay, and so I want to ask this too. If we're talking about education and really being proactive where our health is concerned, when you should go to the doctor, it sounds like, based upon what you just said, and check every so often to see if you are in fact a pre-diabetic. How often should you be checking to just make sure that you're not in the danger zone when it comes to being a diabetic?
Absolutely. So first of all, everyone should see their healthcare provider once a year, whether you have any health conditions or not. And you'll hear people say, oh no, I don't go to the doctor unless I'm not feeling well. No, we should have an annual checkup. You should have established a relationship with your primary care team. They should know about you. When you come in, we take a family history. When we see that you have a family history of diabetes, that's something we're going to ask more questions about. We're going to ask about, you know, how active are you? We're going to ask about your eating patterns and what you do. We may ask you to keep a food diary. So these are things and the information that we collect when you go in. If we see that you have prediabetes, we may do the blood test every 3 months. Again, the life cycle of the red blood cell is 3 to 4 months. So we won't do it before 3 to 4 months. When you have prediabetes, you may only do it every 6 months, depending on if you're really ready to make those lifestyle changes, where we sit you down with a certified diabetes educator. If we sit you down with a nutritionist to help you get on the right track. So there's things that we're going to do. We're not just going to let you, oh, well, just come back. We'll see you in 3 to 4 months. No, we're going to have you a education specialist. We're going to have you work with a nutritionist if that's what we need to have you do. So that when you come back, we want to see that number go down because our goal is to prevent type 2 diabetes. We're going to connect you to a class. If you go to chicagocares.org, I'm a part of that organization. We're doing pre-diabetes classes now. We'll connect you with a class. It's a year commitment. And what do? You weigh in weekly. We get your exercise minutes weekly. We track you. We provide education. We teach you about eating healthy, having healthier eating patterns, but then to able to get that physical activity in up to 150 minutes. You're not the only one in the class, it's a group class. And so you come together and you find the camaraderie. They come together, find the participants get together, they go walking together, you make these lifestyle changes because again, the goal is to prevent diabetes. Let's prevent type 2 diabetes. Let's decrease the rates in which African Americans are dying from a disease that could be managed and controlled.
So what if, because I don't want to overlook the fact that sometimes there are institutional factors like racism that prevent us from having access to medical care. Like we don't have a job that provides us with benefits, or, we're not employed, therefore we don't have health insurance to go to the doctor. Are there places we can get tested if we don't have insurance or don't have a primary care physician?
So yes, so we want your listeners to look at organizations like federally qualified health centers. What are FQHCs? Federally qualified health centers provide care regardless of your ability to pay. UI Health Mile Square, we are a federally qualified health center. Access Community Health, a federally qualified health center. There are so many federally qualified health centers in Chicago that nobody should say, I'm not going to the doctor because I don't have health insurance. There's a sliding fee scale, and they work with you to be able to help you be able to afford health care, to be able to afford to be able to be a healthcare provider. The diabetes prevention program classes are free. ChicagoCares.org. Our classes are free. A lot of sites are hosting the classes, and now we're even doing the classes virtual. I have a class tonight that I do on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. The classes are free. It's just a matter of you taking the time to say, let me get educated so that I can make lifestyle changes to my risk of having type 2 diabetes.
Okay, and I want to talk also about stress, because as I understand it, stress can really be a game changer when it comes to diabetes. So why don't you explain to the folks at home the relationship between being a diabetic and stress?
When you're stressed, your body gives you energy to handle the stress, and it gives you energy by what? Glucose. So that means your liver will make glucose for you. If you're not eating and you're stressed out, your liver can make glucose for you, gluconeogenesis. So stress increases glucose levels in the body. So when you already have prediabetes and you're stressed all the time, what's happening? Your glucose levels. And so you want to try to control your stress. And I know it becomes difficult. This pandemic has been stressful, right? We've seen A1C numbers go up because of the pandemic alone and the stress that it brings. But you have to be able to find that me time. You have to be able to find that time to be able to say, let me stop, let me control the things I can, and the things that I can't control, I just can't stress about it, right? And that's what you want to do. We know it's hard, and you might say, I'm trying really hard not to stress out about it, but inside your body knows you're stressed out, and so it's giving you the energy to get through the stressful situation, and so your body is getting extra glucose, and that's outside of what you're taking in with food.
And I want to make sure I do this too, because I think that one thing that we've learned by doing this series is that unfortunately, sometimes just being Black is stressful. And it's difficult to get a hold on that and get a handle on that and try to function in good health when you are combating so much stress. So do you have particular things that you may see from the African American clients you work with that contribute to stress, and ways that you can encourage them to try to just get that level back down?
So again, social determinants of health that I talked about earlier, right? Those are things that are stressful. What falls under social determinants of health? Racism. It affects your health. Not having food and being hungry, that's stress. Not having a place to live, being homeless, that's stress. Not feeling safe in your neighborhood is stress. So any of those are social determinants of health that are stressors to the body. And so how do you control those things? It's difficult, right? So there are social services. There are not a lot of social services to accommodate all the communities that need the help. But when you are reaching out to an organization, ask for help. There are so many resources out there, but if you don't ask for help, no one knows that you need the help. And so we have to get rid of the stigma of asking for help. But no, I'm just going to do it on my own. I'm just going to try to make mine. There are funds that will help you with housing. There are communities and places that partner with the Greater Chicago Food Depository that have food that you can go and get. There are so many resources out here, but you don't know about the resources if you don't ask for help. So I say, don't be ashamed to ask for help. Reach out to somebody. Even if you are homeless and you go into an emergency room, there are social workers here that can help you. If you go into an agency and say, I need help, there are so many social workers at different agencies for the opportunity to connect you with a social worker to help people find resources.
Is there anything else you'd like us to know about diabetes or pre-diabetes prevention and control?
And so again, I want to just remind people there are classes out there. I am a lifestyle coach for diabetes prevention. ChicagoCares.org is an excellent resource to go to get connected with a class. There are classes all throughout Chicagoland area. I have a class that I teach in the evenings because I heard a lot of people working saying, well, the classes are during the day. I need something. Even offering the evening classes, I still can't always come to a free virtual class to learn about preventing diabetes. And again, learning about eating healthy, physically active, and how to control stress, how to plan and organize my meals, how to plan and organize my activities. You know, the spontaneous things are great, but we want to be able to connect people to the resources. The American Diabetes Association, diabetes.org, is an excellent resource to go and look for information to learn more about diabetes. There's so much information, so much resources, but if you don't ask, you won't get connected to where you need the help. So I just want to encourage people to ask.
You know, and can I ask just this too, because I've been Black my whole life. And one of the things that I've heard consistent when you talk about healthy eating is that it's almost like punishment because the healthy food doesn't taste like the not healthy food. So is it true that if we ask our folks to eat healthier, that we are essentially asking them to go on diets that are tasteless and not satisfying?
Absolutely not. When we say healthier eating, you can eat all the foods you enjoy. It's about moderation. So if you have high blood pressure, you don't want to put a lot of fat back in your greens. That's going to create a lot of salt, right? Let's try maybe some fresh turkey instead of the fat back. There are generations of recipes that have been handed down through the generations, right? But what we have to realize is our ancestors, a lot of them came through slavery time. They needed high food and carbohydrates to have the energy to work in the fields. We're not working in it. We're not walking to work. We're not even sitting in rooms that's too hot. If we go in a room that's so hot and it's not enough air conditioning, some of us are leaving, right? So let's modify those things for how we're living today. So what I always tell people when I work with them is, tell me what you enjoy eating, and let's talk about serving sizes, portion control, and moderation. You don't want to eat fried food every day. It's not healthy. So let's have maybe 1 or 2 days a week of fried food, and let's bake, boil, or grill. So the myth of saying that eating healthier, the food's not good, absolutely not true. You can eat the food you enjoy. It's about having it in moderation and learning how to put that in.
All right. Well, with that, I think you said it all. I really want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Again, Sheila Harmon, UI Health, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to everybody at home, thank you so much for tuning in to another special presentation in our Critical Conditions series. Please do stay with us. So much more to come about the health of Black Chicagoans and what we can do to improve those outcomes.